This is a flu. This is like a flu, but it's not the flu. It's vicious. I want every American to be prepared for the hard days that lie ahead. And I said, I don't want the cure to be worse than the problem itself, the problem being obviously the problem. And, you can destroy a country this way by closing it down. We have 151 countries right now that are under siege by the virus, under siege. Some are doing really badly. They don't know about social distancing. These are countries that aren't highly sophisticated. It's absolutely critical for the American people to follow the guidelines for the next 30 days. It's a matter of life and death, frankly. You treat this like a flu. It's a little like the regular flu that we have flu shots for. And we'll essentially have a flu shot for this in a fairly quick manner. A lot of people have said, a lot of people have thought about it. Write it out. Don't do anything. Just write it out and think of it as the flu. But it's not the flu. It's vicious. Large groups of people, all of a sudden, just by being in the presence of somebody, have it. The flu has never been like that. Easter is a very special day for many reasons, and what a great timeline this would be. I called it aspirational. An aspirational date would be Easter, and I will tell you, it's very, very disappointing. But again, you get too close, and if somebody's sick, you're going to probably catch it. I'm not about bad news. I want to give people hope. I want to give people a feeling that we all have a chance.
How can I describe it? There's so much tension, so much anxiety in the air. The thing that kind of is covering like a heavy blanket over everyone, over the entire hospital, is this: we're being overwhelmed. Hearing stories from nurses who floated here, immunocompromised, and talking about the deaths, the deceased, the sadness, the stress. I just had a baby. She's almost 100 days old, and I was planning to spend a good, 4 or 5 months with her breastfeeding. And as this pandemic hit, I've been at home, anxious, nightmares, waking up thinking about my coworkers, thinking about how this is happening, and I can't stay home anymore. I'm heading into the hospital now, from home, in the car service. We'll see how it's like tonight. We're all finding out about our coworkers getting sick, gravely sick. We've heard that there are 2 nurses in New York City who are colleagues who work in the hospitals that we work in the same conditions, with the same shortage of PPE, staffing, and testing, who are dying. We're afraid for our patients. We're so sad to see folks dying in our ICUs with no family around because of the no visitor policy. And I think at this point, many of us are enraged.
We feel that this national shortage of N95s is exposing nurses.
And it's putting all of us in danger because we're reusing masks that should never be reused.
We already lost our first nurse in New York City. We're going to lose more.
We're being floated. I walked in, they gave me 1 face shield, 1 N95, and 1 surgical mask. And I used those all night.
You woke up from your nap already?
I wouldn't have cut my maternity short if there wasn't a pandemic, if there wasn't a severe shortage of nurses, if I didn't hear my coworkers telling me how they're crying every day. There's a lot of fear of talking because we have our licenses and we have our jobs, but this is such a serious issue that's why nurses are coming out to speak. There's hope if we see that our strength is in ourselves and our collective power, and if we unite.
This way, you know, you can use a scarf. A scarf is, everybody, a lot of people have scarves, and you can use a scarf. Scarf would be very good. And my feeling is if people want to do it, there's certainly no harm to it. I would say do it, but use a scarf if you want, you know, rather than going out and getting a mask or whatever. We're making millions and millions of masks, but we want them to go to the hospitals. I mean, one of the things that Dr. Fauci told me today is we don't want them competing. We don't want everybody competing with the hospitals where you really need them. So you can use scarves. You can use something else over your face. It doesn't have to be a mask. But it's not a bad idea, at least for a period of time. I mean, eventually you're not going to want to do that. You're not going to have to do that. This is going to be gone. It'll be gone. Hopefully gone for a long time.
There are people that literally are wearing bandanas because they have nothing better than that to protect themselves from the respiratory droplets of patients who are infected with COVID-19. And I think that's a national shame.
You get one mask per provider per day. That you take it off, you put it in this brown paper bag, and then you reuse it as much as you have to. We have to make decisions who gets ventilators, who gets dialysis, who gets care.
It's the first time we've ever been truly scared to come to work. But despite being scared, we are trained to save lives, and we're committed to doing that.
I would be able to get an N95 single unit mask for under $2, and I'm paying as high as $20. You show up to what looks like an abandoned warehouse, and I mean, there's nothing there, and then next thing you know, the garage door or loading bay opens, and there's only one person there very quickly to give you access to what you purchased. You go in, and you literally see a lot of stuff, that's available, but the costs are really high.
This afternoon, I invoke the Defense Production Act to compel General Motors to accept, perform, and prioritize federal contracts for ventilators. Ventilators are a big deal, and we've delivered thousands of them. But within the next 100 days, we will either make or get in some form over 100,000 additional units. And I guess to put it in other words, in the next 100 days, we'll receive over 3 times the number of ventilators made during a regular year in the United States. And Boeing will be producing and donating face shields to help our medical professionals on the front lines. These are actually pretty intricate in terms of the plastic and the quality of the materials. They're important.
We've been gathering equipment from everywhere we can, PPE equipment. Most important piece of equipment for us are ventilators, and we're shopping literally around the globe to put it all in place. We're creating a stockpile of this equipment so that when and if the apex hits, we can deploy equipment from the stockpile to whatever region of the state or whatever hospital needs it. The N95 masks, surgical masks, examination gloves, protective gowns, coveralls, and most importantly, the ventilators.
More than half of Americans have been ordered to stay at home. Businesses have been shut down, and President Trump is getting restless.
There are other areas that just aren't affected, or they're affected very little. And why would we close down 100% of the country? We can't have the cure be worse than the problem.
Everyone wants to return to normal quickly. But how realistic is it? Let's compare the outbreak in the US with other countries. It started in China, of course. Then the epicenter shifted to Italy, which now has over 100,000 cases. Let's bring in other countries too. Here we compare every country on the same timeline, with day 1 being the first day it reported 100 cases. We can see that the spike in cases in Spain, for example, was even sharper than in Italy. The one bucking the trend has been South Korea. It avoided a spike by doing one thing better than others.
Experts praise South Korea.
South Korea is now doing more than 10,000 tests per day.
By March 1st, South Korea had tested 100,000 people.
While the US started on a very similar trend, it's seen its cases rise dramatically in recent days. It is now the country with the most cases in the world, topping 160,000 as of Monday. However, the increase in cases reflects the fact that the US has, after a very slow start, finally ramped up the number of tests being carried out. Now, to get a better insight into the severity of the outbreak in each country, we need to look at how many coronavirus infections have proved fatal. These are the number of deaths for Italy, China, and South Korea. Again, on a timeline that allows us to compare them, with day 1 as the first day that country had more than 25 deaths. The death toll in Italy passed 5,000 after 23 days. It is now double that. But let's look at Spain. Its curve is even steeper. It reached the 5,000 mark in 19 days. After almost 3 weeks, the U.S. has over 2,500 deaths, which puts it on a similar trajectory to France. But to understand the effectiveness of a country's response, we need to compare not just the number of deaths, but if the rates are rising or slowing down.
The Chinese death rate is slowing down. We were hopeful that the Italian death rate was beginning to slow.
The death rate continues to slow.
So let's look at the same numbers in a different way, this time adapted to show the rate of change over the first 3 weeks. This way we can see if a country succeeds in slowing the death rate. Let's start with South Korea, where a trace, test, treat strategy has been widely praised. The number of deaths there doubled every 7 days. In comparison, China saw its number of reported deaths double every 3 days, but it succeeded in slowing that trajectory in its 3rd week. So far, European countries have not been able to slow their pace down and are seeing their numbers double every 3 days. The trend in the US has been similar until now, but the rate has increased in recent days. It's certainly nowhere near the slowing down seen in China, South Korea, or even Italy lately. We don't yet know what impact the unprecedented shutdown across much of the US will have on the outbreak, but experts say the worst is still to come.
Well, things won't get back to normal until we flatten this curve for the coronavirus.
No one is going to want to tone down things when you see what's going on in a place like New York City.
Now we're looking at about 21 days for a possible apex.
Nothing would be worse than declaring victory before the victory is won.
The first case of China's new and deadly coronavirus has been reported here in the U.S.
Second case of novel coronavirus.
We have very little problem in this country at this moment. 5. We think it's going to have a very good ending for us.
For hundreds of Americans trapped on this cruise ship, away home at last.
Empty shelves greeted Costco customers trying to buy toilet paper.
There are now at least 100 cases of coronavirus in 14 states. Could cost airlines as much as $113 billion.
6 people have died so far. A number of schools and universities around this country have canceled classes.
The stock market suffered its worst losses since the financial crisis of 2008.
We will be suspending all travel from Europe.
NBA is suspending the season. Now more than 1,030 cases here in the United States.
We will see more cases. Bottom line, it's going to get worse.
I am officially declaring a national emergency.
We need to bend the curve. We direct a statewide order for people to stay at home.
Today we reached a historic milestone in our war against the coronavirus. Over 1 million Americans have now been tested, more than any other country by far, not even close, and tested accurately. The FDA has also authorized the Patil's N95 respirator mask sterilization kits. It's an incredible thing. I've been asking, why are we throwing these masks away? You look at some of these masks and they're significant pieces of equipment, and I say, how come you throw them away? Why aren't they using sterilization techniques? And I got a call from Mike DeWine, the governor of Ohio, and he's a tremendous guy, tremendous governor, and he said, we have a company named Patil, and they're having a hard time getting approval from the FDA, and I called up Dr. Hahn, and within a very short period of time, they got the approval. Steve, we really appreciate it. I want to thank Mike, and I want to thank Steve, and they're going to be able, each machine now can disinfect 120,000 masks per day. Now think of that. Each machine can disinfect 120,000 masks per day. It'll be just like a new one. It can go up to about 20 times for each mask.